Now, a midwife could face legal action after giving a woman in labour saline solution instead of pain relief against her wishes and then lying about it. But in the meantime, her identity is being kept secret despite the fact she is still working with pregnant women. In a report released today, the Health and Disability Commissioner slammed the midwife's actions. The pregnant woman had told her midwife she wanted the painkiller pethidine during the birth in 2018. But instead, the midwife gave the woman a saline solution, telling colleagues that she believed in the placebo effect. Health and Disability Commissioner Anthony Hill says those actions were deliberately deceptive.
I've said in the case that the midwife's actions were disgraceful, not a word that I use lightly. Essentially what happened was there was a plan for pain relief that involved pethidine at the point during labour where the pain was such that the client wished to have pethidine. The midwife said, I will give you that, and instead gave her a saline solution and injected that into the lure and told the client that in fact it was pethidine when it was not. So a very clear and absolute breach of the code.
So she lied to the woman in labour?
She actively deceived the patient. Yes, she did.
Apart from the breach of trust and the lying and the disregarding of the patient's wishes, is this illegal on the part of the midwife? Are these illegal actions?
Oh, it's an absolute breach of the code, which is law in New Zealand, and the price of that for this midwife is that I am referring her to the Director of Proceedings because it is one of the more serious breaches of the code, and the Director will consider whether to take effectively litigation in the Health Practitioners Disciplinary Tribunal, and if that is to occur, it is likely that there would be further conditions imposed should the tribunal uphold a breach of the practitioner's standards of practice in this case.
So disciplinary charges are still a possibility?
Absolutely.
I just want to go back to the woman in labour. So was she left there in a high degree of pain, having set out a labour plan where she asked for pain relief and had consented to pain relief? Was she essentially just left to suffer in distress during this?
That's correct. So the pain relief that she thought was being given, she saw being injected into the lure, she thought she was getting pain relief. She had an initial feeling of comfort, which very quickly faded, and she was commenting on the fact that she was in pain for the next period through that process. More saline was given. So again, we've got a situation where the midwife was simply actively deceiving her client, and it was completely unacceptable.
So what did she think she was doing here?
She would later say to the client that she was acting in the best interests of the baby, which was not the case here, and it was simply that she was preferring to do what she thought was best, and that is absolutely counter to informed consent, which is at the very heart of the code in New Zealand. It's at the very heart of the way we practice in clinical settings in New Zealand, and for that reason it is an unusual case, but it is a very serious one.
Well, there's a couple of things in that. First off, if she says she was acting in the best interests of the baby, I mean, whose interests take priority here? Because if the woman had specified and signed on to a birth protocol, don't her interests take priority?
In a situation like this, it is clear that the first patient is the mother. Clearly there is a second patient in the room, in the babe, but this was not a situation where there were complicated or competing interests, and always the mother is able and should be giving informed consent, because always the mother is the person to whom all this is happening as well. So there is a very clear situation here where there was no ambiguity as to what was going on, no ambiguity as to what was required, and a clear decision by the midwife to do what she thought best, which was simply inappropriate at every level.
Isn't it arrogant to assume that you know better than the patient?
It's really quite extraordinary in this day and age to have this kind of paternalistic attitude exhibited in this way. It's very unusual in the midwifery situation, which is, as I said earlier, built on an ethos which we see every day of a partnership between mother and midwife. This is an unusual case. It does go to the heart of that model, and it is, for that reason, being referred to the director. It's a very serious breach.
While it is an unusual case, I'm sure it will give a number of women pause for thought if they are pregnant currently. What is your advice to them in dealing with their midwives?
Always be open, ask the questions, and have a clear plan, except that sometimes plans are going to need to be amended on the day. But this is about being clear about what the plan is, being clear about expectations and communication. The decisions are for you as the mother. And so it's important that you have the information that you need to make the choices that you want to make about how this is going to go.
But sadly, that doesn't help you, does it, when you have someone who willfully deceives you and just does what they choose?
That's why this person is off to the director, and then I suspect to the health practitioners disciplinary tribunal. This is not behaviour that we will tolerate in the New Zealand environment at all.
So what's her status at the moment? Can she still operate as a midwife?
Yes, she is currently practising. She has taken some steps, which I'm not going to go into in any detail here. We have also referred her to the Midwifery Council and asked for a competency review. And in addition to that, it is very likely that litigation will be taken against her, but that is a matter now for the director.
Is it fair that, because we don't know her identity, that women could sign up to this midwife not knowing what has happened? You've already found in the way you have against her. I understand that there are still proceedings potentially open, but shouldn't people know who she is so that they can make an informed decision about whether they want her?
At this point, I am confident that the process is working appropriately. The midwife is on the radar actively with the Midwifery Council. That process is underway. I'm confident that the appropriate steps are being taken. If I was not, we would be doing something different, but I can personally assure you that the appropriate steps are in place around this person.
But she's an independent midwife, isn't she? So is there some supervision over her in every case that she's dealing with?
I'm not able to go into that detail, but what I can say is that the Midwifery Council process is underway. This person is in that process appropriately, and that will continue. So
are you giving a personal guarantee here?
I'm giving a guarantee that I'm confident that the process that is available is working. I'm confident that the Midwifery Council is looking at this appropriately, yes.
Have her clients been notified?
No.
Wow, doesn't that leave them in a difficult position? Well, actually, it doesn't, does it? Because they're oblivious.
I think it raises a good question about how this will track. I think it's likely that name suppression will be an issue in the tribunal and thereafter, and we have to be very careful about that now. But that's where the process that is in train in the law is working now, which is referral to the Midwifery Council for a competency review and the associated processes that sit around that. So this is not a space where there is no action. I can assure you of that.
And that's the Health and Disability Commissioner, Anthony Hill there.